A political earthquake has rattled the heart of Texas, as State Representative Steve Toth delivered a decisive defeat to incumbent U.S. Representative Dan Crenshaw in the Republican primary for Texas's 2nd Congressional District. The Associated Press called the race late Tuesday night, confirming Toth's commanding lead of 18 percentage points, a margin that stunned political observers and reshapes the landscape of conservative politics in the state. This outcome marks a significant reversal for Crenshaw, a former Navy SEAL who had previously sailed through primaries with double-digit leads since his initial election in 2018. His loss is not merely a local story. It signals a potent ideological shift within the Republican Party, particularly in a district that was already considered a conservative stronghold. The implications extend far beyond the Houston suburbs, raising questions about the future direction of the GOP and the viability of candidates who, like Crenshaw, have at times diverged from the party's most vocal right-wing factions. This primary contest was framed by Toth as a referendum on the very future of the Republican Party, a challenge that resonated deeply with voters seeking a representative who would, in his words, stand firm in his convictions, fight for his constituents, and follow through on his promises. The sheer scale of this upset, particularly against a well-funded and nationally recognized figure like Crenshaw, underscores the evolving dynamics of conservative voter sentiment and the increasing pressure on incumbents to align with a specific, unyielding ideological purity. The path forward for the Republican Party in Texas, and indeed across the nation, now appears to be navigating these increasingly turbulent waters, where the definition of conservative is being fiercely contested at the ballot box. To truly grasp the magnitude of this upset, we must first understand the political profiles of both figures. Dan Crenshaw, a decorated former Navy SEAL, rose to national prominence after his election in 2018, quickly becoming one of the most recognizable faces in the Republican Party. His background and articulate defense of conservative principles earned him a significant platform, and he was often seen as a rising star. However, his political journey has been marked by an independent streak that, while appealing to some, increasingly put him at odds with the party's hard right wing. On the other side, Steve Toth, a state representative from the Woodlands area, has cultivated a reputation as one of the most conservative members of the Texas legislature. A businessman and former pastor, Toth's legislative record includes championing issues like banning critical race theory and securing border security funding. He has consistently positioned himself as a staunch conservative, often aligning with the rightmost faction of the Texas House. The stage was set for a clash of conservative ideologies: Crenshaw, the established national figure with a nuanced approach, versus Toth, the unyielding state legislator advocating for a more uncompromising brand of conservatism. This wasn't merely a contest of personalities, it was a battle for the soul of the Republican Party in a key congressional district, reflecting a broader national struggle over the party's identity and direction. The tension built as Toth's campaign gained momentum, fueled by a narrative that Crenshaw was not conservative enough, setting the stage for a dramatic primary night. Crenshaw's vulnerabilities, which ultimately contributed to his downfall, stemmed from several key positions and actions that alienated a significant portion of the conservative base. Despite his own conservative voting record, he found himself increasingly out of step with the more isolationist and populist elements of the Republican Party. His strong support for aid to Ukraine, for instance, drew sharp criticism from those skeptical of U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts. Furthermore, Crenshaw's acknowledgment of the legitimacy of the 2020 presidential election results, a stance that put him at odds with many fellow Republicans, became a recurring point of contention. He was one of the few Texas Republican candidates in 2022 to publicly accept President Biden's victory, a position that did not endear him to the pro-Trump faction. Perhaps most damaging were his public criticisms of certain Republican politicians, whom he famously labeled as grifters and performance artists for what he perceived as pandering to voters. These comments, widely circulated, created a rift with some of the party's most fervent activists and media figures. Compounding these issues, Crenshaw was notably the only incumbent House Republican from Texas who did not receive an endorsement from former President Donald Trump, a significant factor in a primary election where Trump's influence remains paramount. These cumulative factors painted a picture of an incumbent who, despite his conservative credentials, was perceived by a vocal segment of the electorate as insufficiently loyal to the party's evolving ideological core, leaving him exposed to a challenge from his right. Steve Toth capitalized on these perceived vulnerabilities, crafting a campaign that directly appealed to the disaffected conservative voters in the district. His strategy was clear: position himself as the authentic, uncompromising conservative alternative to Crenshaw. Toth ran on a platform emphasizing MAGA issues, including rolling back vaccine mandates. A stance Crenshaw had opposed, he consistently framed the race as a referendum on the ideological future of the Republican Party, arguing that voters desired representatives who would fight Democrats and not compromise. This message resonated powerfully, particularly in a district that had been redrawn to be even more conservative, making it susceptible to a right-wing challenger. Toth received crucial endorsements that bolstered his credibility and reach. Senator Ted Cruz, a prominent figure in conservative politics, endorsed Toth midway through early voting, providing a significant boost to his campaign. Toth also garnered support from the House Freedom Caucus's political arm, signaling his alignment with the far-right bloc within Congress. His campaign was further supported by conservative megadonors, including Robert Marling, who seeded a pro-Toth super PAC. This combination of a clear, unyielding conservative message, strategic endorsements, and a district reshaped by redistricting created a potent force that Crenshaw ultimately could not withstand. Toth's victory demonstrates the effectiveness of a well-executed campaign that taps into specific ideological currents within the Republican base, particularly when challenging an incumbent perceived to have strayed from those currents. The unseating of Dan Crenshaw by Steve Toth is more than just a local election result. It's a significant indicator of the ongoing ideological realignment within the Republican Party. This outcome suggests a continued shift towards a more populist, nationalist, and uncompromising brand of conservatism, often at the expense of more traditional or establishment figures. The decisive margin of Toth's victory, despite Crenshaw's fundraising advantage and national profile, underscores the power of grassroots conservative sentiment and the influence of key endorsements from figures like Senator Ted Cruz. For the Republican Party nationally, this primary serves as a stark reminder that incumbents, even those with strong conservative records, are not immune to challenges from their right, especially if they are perceived to deviate from the party's most vocal factions on issues like foreign policy or election integrity. The general election in Texas's 2nd Congressional District, a heavily Republican area, is now almost certainly Toth's to win, solidifying his path to Washington. This result will undoubtedly embolden other conservative challengers in future primaries, potentially leading to further purges of incumbents who are not seen as sufficiently aligned with the party's hard right wing. The strategic implications are profound. It reinforces the notion that the path to victory in many Republican primaries lies in demonstrating unwavering adherence to a specific set of conservative principles, often championed by the party's most vocal and influential figures. As the dust settles, political strategists across the country will be dissecting this outcome, understanding its nuances, and preparing for a political landscape increasingly shaped by these internal party battles.